Hello, everyone. We are here again once with Gabriel and all our beautiful people join from different parts of the world. We have America, we have Europe, we have a lot of also nationalities. So we are going today to the second part of the session 16. Please be aware that while our host Gabriel is talking, you are always welcome to ask questions. And to do it so, please use the reactions that you have in our interface and Zoom, and we can give you the word. Otherwise, you can wait till the end of the session, and Gary will answer your questions. The chat is always open. If you feel that you are not willing to be to show your face, you can always just um, put your camera away, and we can always read the questions for you. So being that, so unlike second part, session 16, very interesting, a super long session. And again, welcome and thank you everyone for being here once again. Thank you, Daniel, also for the collaboration. Thank you, every one of you for just collaborate also in just expanding our knowledge a little bit, our conscious, our awareness about what we are doing and who we are. And yeah, Gabriel, welcome to you.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction to this little container that we have, and that I'm happy to just keep contributing and being part of. So, um, in a way, I can say the same thing that I was saying to a workshop that I was doing for a couple of weeks with a group. And I told them, in essence, thank you for coming out and playing with me. Like, we're all children here playing. And it's like I bring my toys and you guys here are, they're ready to play with toys with me, and that this is my toy. This is my space.
Playground.
So yeah, exactly. Thank you guys for providing the playground. Um, so as you mentioned, Tat, we are on the second half of session 16, the longest session of the whole material, not just book one, but book two. And I think session 17 is the second to longest, maybe not, but it's one of the longest too. So we have about 30 questions to cover today. We are going to start with talking about the Confederation of Planets. There is some astronomy involved, which I always love. Not so much my cup of tea with cattle mutilation. We'll probably skip those. No, I'll talk about those slightly. And then there is some conversation about fort density, and then the session winds up. So, um, let's begin where we left off, which is question 32 from last time. And this is I thought it was a great moment to do the transition. So Don is going to ask something different than what he was talking about before, a little bit of astronomy and the positive and negative sides. So the question now goes into the Confederation of Planets, and that will bring us to the topic of astronomy. So question 32, Don says, thank you very much. Can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? And there's a couple of insights that I want to share, some of my musings, if you will. But first, Ra says, the desire to serve begins in the dimension of love or understanding to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex. Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities, plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak, found themselves long, long ago in your time seeking the same thing, service to others. The relationship between these entities as they enter an understanding of other beings, other planetary entities, and other concepts of service was to share and continue together these commonly held goals of service. Thus, each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. This then created a structure whereby each entity, this would probably be a social memory complex, could work in its own service while calling upon any understandings needed to enhance their service. This is the cause of the formation and the matter of the working of the Confederation. So this is the formation of this confederation of planets in the service of the one infinite creator. One thing that dawned on me as I was rereading this session is that it's not explicit here, but I I could probably go um, and speculate that this should have happened after the veil was introduced, maybe, because if they were in service to others, then service to self might have been in place. So just one of those things that sometimes come to my mind when I think of this. So yeah, there are some other things here that I found interesting. You see, when Ross says that the desire to serve begins in fourth density, that's how they open the answer. That this I'm sorry, they say the desire to serve begins to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex in fourth density. So why is that? I like to compare, and I did this last time with you guys. What's the reference that we have in second density, third density, and then we can understand a little bit more fourth density. Well, second density's desire is to individuate themselves. That's the overwhelming desire, right? And then in third density, the overwhelming desire, aside from the choice, which is needed, of course, is to explore this self-awareness that we got from second density, right? So second density became self-aware, and then in third density, you become more interested in self-awareness. That's the inner path. That's what leads to graduation or harvest, um, and at least on the positive side. So what's fourth density? Well, fourth density is what's the overwhelming desire? Love. Yes. So you can see that that which is obtained in third density, for example, when you go into yourself and love is what you find, and you say, ah, that's what I am, then that is what in fourth density becomes like the overwhelming desire. And that leads to service, of course, because love is simply the relationship that we have in a dualistic perception of self. Meaning, if I am and others are, then love is the only connection that exists between us. So it becomes an overwhelming desire um, to be of service. And so what I see here is that because negativity became a thing, service to self became a thing, then not only was the social memory complex formed, but there was also a sort of desire to mix, just like apparently different entities here form a social memory complex. You could see the same thing as an atom and a molecule and so on, cells. Well, social memory complexes, they would get together. And that's what forms a larger database of experiences. And here's where I'll say something probably controversial, but nobody will be able to deny, is that even though as we see this massive database, which we call the Confederation, I would suggest that their information, of course, is great, and it's a great service that they provide. However, to listen to the creator is the most important thing. And they would agree with me in this. So, as magnanimous as it sounds, Confederation, Council, and so on, social memory complexes, there is a layer of you that is beyond all of that and is richer in intelligence, which is the creator. I'll always emphasize that because that's where my heart lies. So, like I said, this is going to move into astronomy, and it's because of the next question, question 33, where Don says, with such a large number of planets in this galaxy, I was wondering if you say there are approximately 500 Confederation planets. He pauses there and kind of shifts the question. He says, that seems to me to be a relatively small percentage of the total number of fourth and fifth density planets around. I think Don realized that the number was smaller than he had previously in his mind, of the amount of, I think we covered this in last session or last time. But in any case, Don does the math and says, is there any reason for this relatively small percentage in this confederation? So if there are all these planets that have um, fourth, fifth density, probably sixth density too, why is it that there are so few that form the confederation? So Ross says there are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of seven of your galaxies, if you will, and is responsible for the callings of the densities of these galaxies. Let me run through the next couple of questions so I can just make comments here, because you're thinking, oh, they're also in Andromeda, right? That's a different galaxy because it's seven of your galaxies. The local group. But no, Don says, would you define the word galaxy as you just use it? And Ross says, we use that term in this sense as you would call star systems. So Don says, I'm a little bit confused as to how many total planets then roughly does the confederation that you are in serve? Ross says, I see the confusion. We have difficulty with your language. The galaxy term must be split. We call galaxy that vibrational complex that is local. Thus, your sun is what we would call the center of a galaxy. We see you have another meaning for this term. You would think Ra would get our terminology right, but they didn't. They confused us with this. But in any case, it's just solar system, star system. That's what they refer to as a galaxy. At any rate, what they were saying is there are seven star systems that we work, right? Seven star systems with which the confederation works. And here's my speculation. I feel that maybe these local seven star systems, which are probably nearby, at least to some degree, maybe they're not nearby in terms of location, but nearby maybe in the archetypical structure. Maybe the confederation is a little bit more, it's closer to these galaxies. I'm trying to think like how these entities evolve from specific archetypical minds and how they share some commonalities, because even in another planet, there will be a different makeup here in the solar system, and it's definitely different in other star systems, but they do have there's a part of what Ra talks about this, and I can't remember where, but there is a sort of familiarity with the archetypes that are being used in certain stars. So this is just my little nerding about the possibility of why they work with seven. But there must be other reasons that I ignore. So the point is that there are different confederations, just like we have different social memory complexes, right? We have different entities, different social memory complexes. So there are different confederations that serve different parts of other star systems. Don says in question 36, yes, in our science, the term galaxy refers to the lenticular star system that contains millions and millions of stars. I can't help but remember Carl Sagan here. Anybody knows Carl Sagan? His meme, billions and billions. Oh, I love that guy. He was my idol at the time when I was studying astronomy. So yeah, that's the galaxy. I love to see Carl Sagan lovers here. So yeah, millions of stars, and this had occurred earlier in our communications, this area of confusion. I'm glad to get it cleared up. Now, using the term galaxy in the sense that I just gave you of the lenticular star system that contains millions of stars, do you know of the evolution in other galaxies besides this one? And of course, Ra says we are aware of life in infinite capacity. You are correct in this assumption. Um, Don says, can you tell me if the progression of life in the other galaxies is similar to progression in this one? Ra says the progression is somewhat close to the same, asymptotically, which means close to identical in this case, asymptotically approaching congruency throughout infinity. The free choosing of what you call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. So there is a bit of a difference, of course, in the progression of each planet, I would say, just to cover everything. There is a difference, but they are all, of course, under the law of one, and the progression is one. Don says, and then the law of one is truly universal in creating the progression toward the eighth density or octave in all galaxies. Is this correct? Ross says, this is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. The progression to unity can only be one, right? And that would be the dissolution of all manifestation, all identity, everything. Just being one with pure awareness, with infinity, which can contain parts. Here's probably one of my favorite parts in the law of one. Question 39. Mark it for your pleasure. 1639. Don says, I am assuming it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from third to fourth density. Is this correct? Ross says, it is absolutely necessary. Now, I wanted to weigh every word that Ross says here. It is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable into fourth density. Understanding is not of this density. Now, this impacts us beautifully. We all say, yes, beautiful. No understanding is required. But here's where I sometimes see a little weakness in how the mind can approach this no understanding. Because wasn't it your own mind that said, oh, not understanding is the right understanding? So aren't you fashioning some sort of understanding there? You went back to understanding. Now I understand that I shouldn't understand. The mind is tricky. So it'll do that. And, this understanding doesn't mean the absence of knowledge, but the absence of belief in knowledge. And that's a bit more tricky because you say, how do I achieve that? Or why do you want to achieve that if you already have it? Edgar says it means that we have to go by faith. Beautiful. Yes, I agree with that. Faith is knowing without an explanation, without proof, right? And to the thinking mind, this is death. No way. You can't do that. It seems like a paradox, but it's only a paradox for the thinking mind. Now, I see this a lot. And if you practice meditation of any sort, you'll see that the same thing is present because in meditation, you ever heard you have to calm your mind? Well, how can you calm your mind? That's impossible. And I always use the reference of the water. You have a pond and there's some ripples in the water, and I say, go and calm the water. Go ahead. Flatten it out with your hand or some other tool. What's going to happen? You won't be able to, right? So meditation is not an absence of thought, it's an absence of identification with thought. Boof, you're there. You're always there, actually. Same thing with morality, something I talked about before. The absence of morality doesn't mean that there isn't a sort of conduct, behavior, right? It's just that there is no strict rule, there is no belief in one particular thing. And I think it was here where we covered the Ten Commandments. That's a belief. Your commandments should be your own. You make them up based on your experience. That's total freedom. So it's a thin line because the mind likes to have things structure. So yeah, that's not the type of not understanding that is needed. It's it's simply, you know, sorry to linger here, but there's so many beautiful things. Socrates was well known to say, I know nothing. Basically, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. This is because the Oracle of Delphi told him, Socrates, you're the wisest. And he said, that can't be because I don't, how could you say that if I acknowledge that I know nothing? I don't understand it. So he went around and figured out, who were the wisest out there and intelligent. And he said, oh, now I understand because I'm the only one that admits it's his own ignorance. Like I know I'm based on my own ignorance. I don't know anything. So that is the wisest approach. So yeah, I love this part. It's absolutely necessary. That's why I said weigh their words because they say it is absolutely necessary. It's not necessary, it's absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand. Consciously realize. What does that mean to be consciously aware that it doesn't understand? It's not ignorance. Ignorance is bliss, we say. That's not the type of ignorance or non-understanding that is suggested here. It's a conscious. It's saying, oh, yes, I know. It's not a repeating. It's not saying, oh, well, I don't know anything. So I'm good because I don't know anything. It's really deep inside knowing. I have no idea. I have no idea. And it feels good. It's freedom, precisely from the mind that thinks it knows and the rigidity that we can get from that. So have strong beliefs, but hold them loosely. I heard that a long time ago. I think it's beautiful. All right, let's move on. Question 4T. Don says, that is a very important point. I used the wrong word. What I meant to say was I believe that it was not necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to go from third to fourth density. And Ross says this is correct. So see, that's the difference. See, you don't have to be consciously aware of what the law of one is. You can just be, somebody without any interaction with civilization, and somehow you just, got into the flow of life, and that's it. That's the that's the biggest job here in third density. So yeah, you don't have to be consciously aware of what the law of one is, or non-duality, or Zen, or whatever else that makes our heart flutter. Don says, question 41, at what point in densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to progress? And Ross says, the fifth density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor duty of the law of one. This responsibility honor is the foundation of this vibration, which I like to see the densities as pure existence within a particular vibration. So we have pure existence in third density, which is based on this perception of separation thanks to the veil, right? So it becomes, as Ross says, vivid, very much alive. You're here. Something might happen to you. whoa, watch out. See? So that's the separation. You're always watching yourself. Um, so it's pure existence in a sort of state of mind. You could see it that way. For density, pure existence in this cloying love, you know? And it's funny because when we read certain um, channelings from Hatan, for example, we can see that, you know, it's not romantic. Maybe it is romantic. It just feels full of, you know, relatedness, their words, everything. So it's pure existence. Obviously, to move from fifth to sixth density, then the law of one, which is the resolution of paradoxes, that's to move into pure existence within that. Question 42, Don asks clarification on that concept of honor responsibility. And he says, can you tell me a little bit more or a little more about this honor responsibility concept? Ross says, each responsibility is an honor, each honor a responsibility. So I would suggest that you individually ponder the meaning of these two words. What does responsibility mean to you? What does honor mean to you? And play with that because these words have a meaning, responsibility and honor. If there is a split between the two, it's a good idea to contemplate both together. Your responsibility is an honor, and your honor should be a responsibility. 43, Don says, I want to ask a rather questionable question. It is questionable, Don. I may not put it in the book, he said, but he did. I was wondering if cattle mutilations, what that we now experience across the country and elsewhere, could be explained by you. Ross says the greater part of your so-called mutilations take place according to the ways of your second density beings, which feed upon carrion. A portion of these so-called mutilations are those which are of what you may call multidimensional type, a thought form construct using various parts in order to have life and being in third density. We have like three more questions here, so I'm just going to go through them. Where do these thought forms come from? Ross says this is a very ambiguous question. However, we will attempt to answer. The first one is the best part. Firstly, they come from the creator. That's a slight nudge. I feel like that's the humor of Ross. Sometimes just putting in there like, they all come from the creator. Everything comes from the creator. Look, pay attention there. Secondly, they say they come from what you may call lower astral inner plane thought. Thirdly, in construct visualization complex, they reside in parts beneath the crust of your planet. Don says, are these one form in particular? Ross says these entities may take any thought form associated with an emotion of fear or terror. And last question on this. Don says, are these thought forms able to attack only cattle, or can they also attack human beings? And Ron says these thought forms cannot attack third density beings. So that's it. This is not my cup of tea, as all of you should know at this point, but I will leave the teapot there for you guys, and you can grab your own tea bags, warm your water, and steep yourself in that rabbit hole if you want. Not me. Question 47. Don says, thank you. Can you tell me of the silver flecks that we have found sometimes on our faces or elsewhere? Ross says, these of which you speak are a materialization of a subjectively oriented signpost indicating to one mind-body-spirit complex and no other, a meaning of subjective nature. So, in other words, synchronicities. Anybody here not have a synchronicity in their life? You wouldn't be here. if you didn't. No way. You're right, Daniel. We all love synchronicities. And isn't it one of the things here that you have a synchronicity? And I know you see, Edgar says, today I was listening to this session. Is that a synchronicity for you? Let me know. Or were you purposely listening to the session because of today?
Uh, Actually, I didn't know the session was going to be here. I just saw the link from Josh pop and I go, oh, I want to join you because I always wanted to meet you in person. But this morning I was actually listening to the same session and I was going over what you were saying. It's beautiful. It's like, yes, synchronicity right here, my friend. I love it.
Love that. See, we got a good, fresh example of a synchronicity. And here's the thing. Depending on the intensity of the synchronicity, you want to share it, right? And then you say, "Oh, I wish I could share this," and you tell somebody, and somehow, obviously, that intensity cannot be transferred. People are going to be like, "Oh, wow, that's," at best they're going to be sympathetic and be like, "Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool." But inside, you're like, "It's not cool. It's the best thing in the world," you know? So that's why I feel that Ross says it's a subjectively oriented signpost indicating to a person and no other a meaning of subjective nature. So, yes, I'll share one, which to me it's pretty tied into everything. To me, it's tied into everything. But this was at the time where my mom was at the hospital before she was diagnosed. I think she was already diagnosed with sudden, like terminal cancer in like 2 weeks. She's got to live. And there's a lot of turmoil. And I had to deal with family. I was the one in the middle of the whole process, dealing with not only her, the doctors, and my family, and giving, the news and everything. If my name ever had any meaning related to the Archangel Gabriel, that was the moment. I was the messenger of all this. So it was a turmoil, and I was balanced. I felt good, but still, so many thoughts. And I remember walking by, like, what are the chances of me just walking through the parking lot of the hospital, and I look at the license plate of one of the car, and it said Adonai. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I have a picture still of that. So I was already into the law of one probably like a year at that point. And I had begun my podcast and everything. So it was like, boom, right there. So yeah, these synchronicities are subjective. They're meant to be for you, not for anybody else. And I think this is the next question that Don says. Yeah. So Don says, who creates the silver flecks? Are they real? He's interested, of course, in the physical phenomena. Uh, Ross says, picture, if you will, the increasing potential for learned teaching. At some point, a sign will be given to indicate the appropriateness or importance of that learned teaching. The entity itself, in cooperation with the inner planes, creates whatever signpost is most understandable or noticeable to it. Don says, you're saying that we ourselves then create these? Ron says, entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex, having touch in understanding intelligent infinity, create them. Ah, that's much better. So I can't help but highlight the following thing. So can I get away with this? I think I can. So who is the one that doesn't create it, and who's the one that does? Of course, it is us. But the way we perceive ourselves as the doer is the one that is being sliced off here. No, no. You as a doer do not do this. It's this which is the doing that's happening. And because the conscious mind seems separated from the rest because of the veil, right? It thinks it's its own entity. That is why it's in a confused state. And the confused self, when is aware of its own confusion, calls this a spiritual path. Yes, it calls it, oh, I'm in search for divinity. You're in search for yourself. What is divinity if it's not you? You see? So I'm playing with the words here, but of course, everything's being created by, well, by the creator, right? But here's the highlight, yeah. The conscious, we don't consciously create synchronicities. And if you try to do it, it just feels fake, phony, you know. Try it out. You're like, oh, that's a synchronicity. Is it really? Does it have does it really come from the inside? And no. So yes, it's a beautiful thing to just allow these things to be as they are. And the reason why they happen, Ra explains this, is because at some point, understanding becomes available. Yes, that's it. I'm going to summarize it as that. Understanding, which is infinite, becomes available at some point. Synchronicities are always pointing to that. The more you get in tune with what is it that you were feeling at the moment, and what is it that was coming through. And all synchronicities, by the way, they have this effect of making you feel like, oh, that's what it generates. So it's pointing at you that whatever it is that you were thinking or something, um, see what the message is there. See what it is that it's bringing you more into that moment. I can't give, of course, a recipe for this, but it's just getting more in touch with what is it that you're going through. And where is the message of peace, of everything's well, relax. Yeah. And I think for us who are law of one nerds, this part where Ross says the roots of mind complex having touch in understanding, intelligent infinity create them. Wow. Poetic. The roots of mind complex having touch in understanding, in pure understanding. See, that's why this is not the density of understanding. Because understanding is something that goes into the deeper portions of the mind, which is the pure intelligence of the self, and it just bubbles through. And there's no way you can understand. In fact, can I get away with another anecdote? Yes, I can. Hopefully. I remember waking up one day, and I think all of you have had this type of experience. Dreams, psychedelics, whatever. You've all had these experiences where you have the most intense experience of understanding, which is not of words. And this happened to me. The reason why I want to bring this anecdote is because I was waking up from regular sleep. I was sleeping, I woke up, and I woke up with the most pure understanding of why I was here, my mission, my purpose, what I do, my service. And it was so pure. I remember just feeling pure light and understanding. And I said, finally figure it out. Like I figured out my whole life. And as I woke up and I just felt my mind contracting. And I said, no, I'm not going to lose it because I can see it. I can properly see it. It was like zooming out. And the words that came to me were, I'm here to help others. It just felt so diluted. Like, I mean, yes, poetically, everybody knows, like, oh, that sounds beautiful. But no, that doesn't compare at all with what I was feeling. So, yeah, that's where understanding lies. It cannot be abstracted. It's like love. Show to me that you love me. We've all had that issue. I can't. Anyhow, let's move to question 50. We take a little turn and description of four density. Don says in question 50, thank you. Is it possible for you to give a small description of the conditions in fourth density? Oh, I love this too. So many things I love about this session. Ross says, we ask you to consider as we speak that there are no words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited still until we become without words. I know Josh Blue is here and he went through my direct path course and he knows that I open my first initial lesson or pointer is the via negativa, the apophatic approach or neti. The only way you can approach your true identity is by defining it by what it is not. And so Ra is referring to the same thing here. Just like I said, this understanding cannot be abstracted. So we have to go through negation. So negation is what Ra is going to use. They say beyond fourth density, our ability grows more limited still until we become without words. Silence. Anybody know Ramana Maharshi's highest teaching? What do you say about his highest teaching? Silence. But he said, not everybody is ready to understand silence. So they want words. And he wrote the Upadesa Saram. Very small things, just pointers. So Ra continues and says, that which fourth density is not, it is not of words, unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. I think that came up last time. It is, there are, of course, there is always a vehicle. If you don't have a vehicle, then you don't exist, period. Even if it's a mental construct, you still have a vehicle. In all densities, there is a vehicle, some form or shape. Otherwise, you wouldn't call yourself an entity, would you? So it's not of heavy chemical vehicles. We are of a heavy chemical vehicle here. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Just like you can't fool me if you act like, I don't know, Clint Eastwood or Marilyn Monroe or whoever you want to act, I'm still going to see you. You can't fool me. I mean, I love your act and everything, but yeah, I'm still going to see through the act. And that's how it was pre-veil and post-veil here, third density into fourth. Approximations of positive statements. Now they're going to try with the positive. It is a plane of a type of bipedal vehicle, which is much denser and more full of life. I have a question here. I don't know that all life in fourth density has a bipedal vehicle. I think this is Ra's description of at the very least, our solar system, right? But maybe the whole universe has bipedal entities. I doubt it. It's an infinite universe. In any case, so bipedal vehicles, it is a plane wherein one is aware of the thoughts of other selves. That's another one. It's a bit scary for us here. Whoa, don't look at my thoughts. um, so yeah, just like I see you, I like to go to second density again, and I can know you as a person. I can remember your features and the things you like and don't like. And for second density, that would be a thought of, wow, that's interesting. How does third density does that? So something similar, I would say. It is a plane where one is aware of the vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. That's fifth density. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced, although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Go no further for a third density example of that, and it's this group, right? This is a group where individual differences are pronounced. I'm doing it right here in front of you. Although automatically harmonized by group consensus. We do this. And I belong to other groups, particularly one that I am very much in love with right now, which is a group of people who are in service in different ways, different methods, different services that people have. And we all get together in different ways to share what our experience is to work with others and to serve others. And, all of our differences are just there they're automatically harmonized because we have one direction, one idea, and it's how to become of better service. And it's just beautiful. It comes out of that. So whenever possible, that's a good tool to have. So wink, wink to Tat and Daniel for, again, making the playground available. Question 51, Don says, could you define the word density as we have begun or been using it to give us a little greater idea of the concept of this term when used by you? Ross says the term density is what you would call mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence, which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density, there are 7 subdensities. Within each subdensity, 7 sub-subdensities, and so on, infinitely. So I'm not a mathematician or a musician, but we get the gist of it pretty easy. This. Question 52. Don is just checking on Carla's energies. I noticed that the time we have used has gone slightly over an hour. I would prefer to continue, but I want to ask at this time as the condition of the instrument. But Ross says the instrument is in balance. It is well to continue if you desire. Don goes on and says, all right, continuing with what we were just talking about, namely densities. I understand that each density has 7 subdensities, which again have 7 subdensities, which so on. This expands at an extremely large rate as things are increased in powers of 7. Does this mean that in any density level, anything that you can think of is happening, and many things that you never thought of are happening? Pauses and says, are there? Pauses, says, everything is happening. Pauses and says, this is confusing. It is. Ross says, from your confusion, we select the concept with which you struggle. That being infinite opportunity, you may consider any possibility, probability complex as having an existence. So instead of us thinking like everything exists at once, at the same time, think about, I'll even simplify it further. Does anybody here not have imagination? Anybody not have imagination? Have you ever not been able to imagine something? So what does imagination look like to you? Nothing. It can't have any sort of feature. Imagination is empty until something appears in it. Same thing with awareness or consciousness. It's empty. But all possibilities are there. We always say imagination is infinite. It has no limits. Why? Because it has, well, no delimitations. So that's it. All these densities exist because they're just a holographic procedure of creation. So whatever you create has 7 subdensities, period. That's it. And it goes on and on and on and on. So it's not so difficult. Don says, does what we do when we think of possibilities that can occur, I read that terribly, I think. Does what we do when we think of possibilities that can occur, say daydreaming, do these become real in these densities? Ra says, this depends upon the nature of the daydream. This is a large subject, so keep that in mind. Perhaps the simplest thing we can say is if the daydream, as you call it, is one which attracts to self, this then becomes reality to self. If it is contemplative, general daydreaming, this may enter the infinity of possibility probability complexes and occur elsewhere, having no particular attachment to the energy fields of the creator. So they're going to go a little bit more on daydream, but my take on this is that there are different daydreamings that we have. And the more, forget about daydreaming, it's just going back to imagination where your mind ruminates and goes on and on. Um, there are ones that are almost like attached to us and we keep going and going with them. The way I see it is that these are the ones that are attracted to ourselves. Yes, there's a reason. I don't know why. We all have them. And that's what we, in the long run, which they're going to say here, may actually manifest. And in fact, I would go on to say that everything that is manifested around you is because, well, you did it. Of course you did it. Not you did it, you're doing it. But is it the you, that what I said before, the conscious mind saying I did it? Or is the deepest parts of the mind doing it? You see? So these thoughts, these contemplative thoughts and so on, they're attracting that to you as well. I love this because this breaks so many of the metaphysical misconceptions that I hear out there where, people are robbing my energy. I'm a victim basically of the environment, um, stealing my energy is what this is, something like that. Things of that nature of, always putting things outside things are happening to me. Um, this doesn't, this is just, it's like one big spectrum of things. Obviously, your life is the one that it's created, but certain things can be attracted to you, of course, and that depends on your alignment with it and so many other things. But this is a large subject, like Ross said. Don continues and says, to make this a little more clear, if I were to daydream strongly about building a ship, would this occur in one of these other densities? Ross says this would have or shall occur. So, are you somehow receiving an echo of something? Are you projecting a possibility, or are you wanting to create it? Again, so much we can go into this, and I'm not the best to serve in this way. Don continues, says, and then if, say, an entity daydreams strongly about battling, let us say, another entity, would this occur? Ross says, in this case, the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self. This binds the thought form to the possibility probability complex connected with the self, which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the possibility probability of bringing this into third density occurrence. This is very simple, actually. If you have a thought that you want to do something and you're involved and you keep having it, eventually you're going to find out a way to do it, period. I don't think I have to go too deep into this. But it could be, one of those, what do they call it? Intrusive thoughts. No worries. We all have intrusive thoughts. They're usually trying to push an old lady, down the stairs, or I'm not the only one here. Come on, don't leave me alone with this. You always have these weird thoughts that come and go, and you just know that are just weird. I call it the knife in the kitchen phenomenon. We all have a knife in the kitchen, and there's people around, and you have these thoughts, right? They're just flying thoughts. Forget about it. They're not going to happen unless, of course, you do. have a sort of feeding. And this could be actually pretty tangible. Some people may entertain this thought a lot more. Uh, but I just wanted to throw in that in. So you see that there are many thoughts, especially in meditation. You say, like, where did that come from? I have no idea. So, yeah. Question 57. Don says, does the Orion group, am I in question 57? Yes. Does the Orion group use this principle to create conditions brought about to suit their purpose? Don says, we will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative vibratory natures to feedback or strengthen these thought forms. So again, you are the creator. Orion negatives, what do? I don't mean to get into this, but how does the negative third density beings get what they want? They strengthen an idea in you. And so you become, that guy with the fist in the air saying, I am for this or I am against this. See, the idea is planted in you and you strengthen it. Manipulation of others. One has been happening for thousands of years, always manipulating the masses. They're the ones creating it. So the Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative vibratory natures to basically strengthen their own thought forms because it benefits them. Not much to say there. Pretty simple. 58. Don says, do they ever use any, shall I say, gratifications of the physical body to amplify such daydreams? Pretty interesting question. Ra says they are able to do this only when there is a strong ability on the part of the receiving mind-body-spirit complex towards the perception of thought forms. This could be termed an unusual characteristic, but has indeed been a method used by Orion entities. Once again, you have to have a strong ability to be able to entertain and strengthen these thought forms. And yeah, you will become a conduit for that. So it goes beyond my understanding of, why some people have or don't have that. Just like we can understand why people behave the way they do. So we move on to, no, same subject. I think we're going to finish with this. Last couple of questions. Don says, the many wanderers coming to this planet now and in the recent past, are they subject to Orion thoughts? Ra says, as we have said before, wanderers become completely the creature of third density in mind-body complex, not spirit. There is just as much chance of such influence to a wanderer entity as to a mind-body spirit complex of this planetary sphere. So whether they are wanderers or natives, I like to say, of planet Earth, who have grown their mind-body-spirit complex from the beginning here, they are both the same, right? There's nothing special in one or the other in terms of the experience here. I know there are minor differences in terms of mind and spirit, but you get my point. The only difference occurs in the spirit complex, which, if it wishes, has an armor of light, if you will, which enables it to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would appropriately be desired by the mind-body-spirit complex. This is not more than a bias and cannot be called an understanding. Third time we hear this word. Furthermore, the wanderer is in its own mind-body-spirit complex less distorted towards the, shall we say, deviousness of third density positive negative confusions. Thus, it often does not recognize as easily as a more negative individual the negative nature of thoughts or beings. So not only does it have a sort of armor of light, which I love this when they say to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would be appropriately or would appropriately be desired by the individual. So it's almost like you get a, I think this is something that's going to resonate with everybody. It seems brutal to think for us that animal cruelty was the norm. Everybody was just like, it's just an animal. Beat him up, kill it. Who cares? Right? For us, that's the armor of light, I would say, where animal cruelty is like, what? Slavery, things like that. You know, it's like a natural understanding you say from childhood. You would just be exposed to this and say like, wow, that's something completely backwards. It's wrong, right? Whereas before, it was just like the norm. Yeah, sure. Let's go buy some slaves. Normal things to do in the day. And animal cruelty, like I said. So I feel like that's what it is. So we have two more questions. Don says, would then the Wanderers, as they incarnate here, be high priority targets, shall we say, of the Orion group? Ra says, this is correct. And if a Wanderer, and I think this is, let me just riff off of this one. So Wanderer has a lot more capacity, right? It becomes perfect for the Orion group. If it has more capacity and it's in a state of infusion, that's beautiful. That's great for the Orion group. You see? So more of an incentive for anybody who considers themselves a wanderer to get out of victimhood mentality. That's the first thing that needs to come out. As soon as you come out of the victimhood mentality, you're out. There is no more manipulation, no more influence. You're in control. I shouldn't use the word control. You're the one responsible and honor, yeah, for your own activities, for everything that happens to you, your actions and so on. So, yes, the wanderers, as they incarnate here, are the high priorities targets of the Orion group. I mean, it just makes sense. If I were to manipulate humans, I would want to get the ones that are obviously more beneficial, to my cause. I want those who are super intelligent, the ones that are geniuses. Those are the ones that I want. Yes? I hope I'm not inflating some spiritual egos here with wanderers. But it's just about capacity. How much capacity of light can you have? So, and I would say that possibly the sorrow of a wanderer is bigger than, a third density or a second to third density being natural, regular, recent graduated from second density. Just think about that, right? The sorrow, the amount of affliction that they feel and so on. It makes sense to me. So isn't that a benefit for the Orion group to have that sorrow here? Of course it is. It plays out perfectly. Anyhow, last question for today. Don says, and if a wanderer were to be successfully infringed upon, shall I say, by the Orion group, what would happen to this wanderer at the harvest? We know this. Ra says, if the wanderer entity demonstrated through action, important, through action, a negative orientation towards other selves, it would be, as we have said before, caught into the planetary vibration and, when harvested, possibly repeat again the master cycle of third density as a planetary entity. That's it. Ra said this also in terms of karma. You have to be consciously making decisions that are of a service to self nature to be able to get stuck here as a wanderer. So, can that happen? Of course. Should you worry about that? I don't think so. Um, you have to be consciously involved in negative service to self behaviors and be conscious of it. So I hear a lot of fear sometimes that comes out when people say like, oh, am I being caught here if I'm a wanderer? Well, are you being a service to self? Are you aware of that? That's the question. The many thoughts that we have, the shadow self that is lying, lurking under some layers in our minds. That's not the one that is going to cause negative harvest. That's just, our lack of clarity. That's it. But that's the one that haunts us, and says, "Oh my God, I may be stuck here because I told my mom this one day and I was terrible, and this is haunting me. I'm gonna be stuck here. I'm an evil person." I'm not trying to make a joke out of this, but I am. All right, so that's it. That's all I got. I got extended a couple of minutes, but
Thank you, Gabriel. You definitely, I was laughing more than 2 times when you were giving examples about like what harvest can be, like the slavery, and like it somehow is funny if you start to see it from like a farther view and not to get involved exactly into this kind of game. And actually, I was hearing today a podcast about like how Christianity or religion always try to point out about the role of Jesus, that we need to be Jesus, but Jesus has his own personality, and he one of the one who was saying like, don't be like me, go and do your thing. I don't need to be, I don't need to be your God. You are your God. So this is like about this session. There were like a lot of questions, and I was thinking about this podcast I was hearing today. And again, like as you close it, like, oh my God, I'm going to be here like forever and ever in this dilemma that I'm the wrong one. And again, to being conscious, like, because sometimes we are taking decisions that we somehow think we know that benefit us. And is, like the other one maybe cannot get a benefit, and we are having the benefit. And that is exactly where you need to think about it. Like, what is exactly what I'm doing here? Alex, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to have a benefit of this situation? Or I'm just doing this because I really like it? Or I'm that's my nature. So, and we tend to forget that, like we really tend to somehow push our reality afar, and ge- get somehow into the play, into this game that sometimes it's a little bit foggy. Mm, but yeah, like be aware what you are doing, be aware who you are, and don't judge, and don't say you are the one. You were the one who was telling me to go there and ask for this. Yeah, I told you that, but you are the one who is taking the decision to do it. So I was not saying to you do it. So always take the responsibility, like you said it before. Be responsibility. Is your responsibility is not from the other one. And that's like one of the part aspects that we should really have in mind. And thank you for being like having this session like a little bit fun on it. I at least I'll laugh at it. So yeah, that's from this side. Like guys, already open mic. If you have questions, if you want to say something about like, Josh, you were like writing into the chat. You want to comment something now? Josh Blue.
Yeah, I just was trying to make some comments that sparked in my mind while Gabriel was reading. I had an experience. I would say it's been a couple years where I saw. Um, hmm, I don't know if UFO is the right word, but it was a very bright, vivid colored, red, flame-like, and up high in the sky. It was extremely large. And I went back in to grab my phone to record it and grab my wife to go look at it again. We both got out of went back outside and traveled down the road. We both saw it momentarily, traveled through some trees to get to a clearing, and it was completely gone. And it just sparked my mind for a long time. And I researched the internet to see if anybody else had any other reports of it. I couldn't find anything. Um, I did find on Ancient Aliens, they had a uh, episode on Chilean UFOs, and they reported some like fireball type UFOs that looked similar. But I think I was rereading Raw and figured out that that description sounded a lot like an Orion craft, which kind of confused me, I guess. I'm like, I feel like I'm on this path of service to others, and why am I seeing an Orion craft potentially? And I just kind of realized going through this session and listening to the raw comments again through Gabriel that I believe it was just a catalyst for me to spark and give me a choice. Do I want to go down a negative path potentially and explore these UFO phenomenon through a service to self perspective, or the opposite? I guess I didn't really let it sink in much, but an interesting experience. I'll go ahead and mute now. Thank you. How to mute still? I still don't know how to mute, guys. Sorry.
Thanks for sharing that, Josh. Can I share a comment on that? So remember what Ross said in two things that came up to mind, session 8 at the beginning, how all of these appearances are meant to call you in, basically, all of them. They're made just as you interpret it. Whatever the message might be, it's always going, into the forge of the self. Like, what is it? What is it that it's available for me to shape my life in one direction, in a direction that I want? And the other part, this is a bit long and I don't remember everything, but they're in the 50s, session 50s, I mean. They talk about, what do they call it? Contact of some kind, whatever it is. Close contact, something. Close encounters, I forget the term. But they describe this as a purely, I mean, everything is mental. And I always want to take away the misconception when we say it's all in your mind. I think it's been hammered onto us that it's all in your mind means I'm discrediting you because it's not real. But that's what it means. All these subjective experiences, they're all within the roots of the mind. They're happening from the roots of the mind and coming up, surfacing. They'll appear, of course, as physical phenomena. Sometimes it's like, was it real? Some people saw it, others didn't, and so on. So it reveals a bit more of the subjective nature, as Ross said, for synchronicities. But to me, these two things align perfectly with saying like, oh, so, you got your number that day, and that number was to get the message. And the deepest that message can go is, like Ross says, to the most mysterious thing that exists. And I don't care what anybody else says. The most mysterious thing is who you are. Nobody has an answer for that. Nobody. And I was just remember I was telling my son, my biology professor gave us a project one day, and we were all so used to guidelines and all these things that we have to do. And he said, I'm just going to ask you one question. What's life? Go ahead, do a project. It's like a long project that we had to do. I'm like, that's it? Yes. What's life? Go. But what do you mean? No, what's life? Just answer that question. Nobody could do anything. We were all stuck. The same thing, what's the most mysterious thing? Who you are. It's all bringing you there. Of course, your mind's going to find all kinds of little things that it's going to say, should I figure it out this way or that way, and so on. And that's the fun of it. That's your fun path. But they're all leading that way. That's my contribution or my suggestion.
Thank you. Anyone else who want to share something? But also just like exactly, I said to someone last week, when you are shining, you are seeing a lot of light, but sometimes you need to go to the darkness actually to see how light goes through it, like you need to go to the dark side, or you need to go, no, don't say like dark side. You need to reckon shadow in order to see how lightly you are, or how light goes through it. And it doesn't matter how you do it, how you did it, and in which state you were able actually to reckon exactly that. Oh my God, it's already happening, like it's like I'm already, in your words, I'm already doing STO, but where is like STS coming to me if I don't want it? But that's part also of our path, like it's part also to reckon what is the other side and how can I react to it, or maybe not even react, just to be aware that it exists. You don't need to avoid it. It's there. It's there. It's just that. And that's totally fine. And if you, of course, want to be involved, go be involved, but don't stuck into one situation. But because we are here just to have this experience, that is literally a roller coaster that sometimes goes up, sometimes down, sometimes it's stable. Though we are here to do that. So, Robert, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Todd. On that, when you're mentioning like a greeting from the so-called negative entities, and I like to have the realization that in the great ever-present now, we are friends in the late sixth density. They are our companions. They're part of our social memory complex by that time. And what we're experiencing now is this greater degree of separation and fear, but they are actually our brothers and sisters still, and we must love them, which is what they don't like right now, but they will inevitably come to that conclusion, as we know in the late sixth density, of the greater gift of love and understanding. So it's just, I know we're so easily in fear right now, even with the great election fear that we went through here in the US. But it's just part of the process. Let's all just love it all, and understanding those dark brethren and sisterin. It's just part of our process right now. Thank you, Gabriel. That was very, very enlightening today also. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that comment too, Rob. Can I make a suggestion or add on to that?
Well, of course, that's why we're here. Yes.
Yeah, so just to point out the truth of identity, because identity is what determines experience. And I would add on to the fact that in sixth density, everything is reconciled, yes. And from the point of view of identity from an entity, right? A thing that exists, that's what entity means in its etymology, a thing that exists. If your identity is as a thing that exists, regardless of polarity, you will experience, of course, the duality of reality. So it's really always a matter of choices of how we reinforce our identity moment to moment and what we experience. And from that point of view, yes, there will always be a dynamic. I won't call it a conflict, but a dynamic. And so negative thoughts are perceived always as a suggestion because you're entering the game. So which team do you want to play? You will always get this. And that seems to be the struggle. It's not a struggle. It's a constant experiencing, it's a playfulness. It's not a conflict. It's not, this war or whatever they call it. But if you identify yourself with the true being that there really is, there's only one being, then from that point of view, everything that is happening, for example, and I'll give a little credence to the apparent reality of negativity. The apparent reality of negativity can only exist in contrast with something that opposes it. And that's why you said, yes, they don't like, negative thought cannot exist in the presence of no identity. It requires identity. Whereas what we know as positive is simply the movement towards infinity in its true form. And I'm playing a lot with words here, but that's what it is. It's always a matter of where do we position ourselves? Where do we begin the conception of experience? From which point? And I'm not saying that it's wrong to be in a separate state or anything, that's just a game. But rearranging our mentality, our identity, our harmony with everything inevitably it needs to involve a touching, Rock calls it contact with intelligent infinity. I simply say it, align yourself with the truth. The only truth that you have is that you are. You don't need anything else. That's it. Don't go beyond that. Stay with that. And everything just dissipates. Meditation is the same thing. You can just see it. No interaction with thoughts, just one thing going. You and that, it's one thing. The moment you're interacted with thoughts, all these things that you created separation there, and you're experiencing it, and you feel friction and all emotions and so on. So it's just that those who are in a path for more harmony, more peace, then be one with the river. Don't fight it. Don't even swim, forward. Where are you going? What's the rush? Stay with it. Let the current float.
Wonderful elucidation. Thank you. I wish I could speak as well as you upon such matters. I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Robert, there's a voice in me that always says the same thing. I wish I could speak better. So,
yeah, we're human.
Okay. Gabriel, I think we are also coming into the closing. You were saying a lot of things today. I feel that almost like the last words were like kind of a closing. Do you want to add something else?
no, I think I've spoken enough.
Cool.
Just, yeah, no, just don't do anything to be better. Don't do anything to be better. You're coming out of perfection when you think that. It's the only thing I'll say.
Yeah. Actually, you said that a lot in your podcast, where you already did the sessions, like that sometimes people come to you and, like because you having these one-on-one sessions, and like you said to them, like, yeah, you're already perfect. And like people are like, no, I'm not perfect, I have this, and oh my God, my mom said that, and no, I'm not perfect, I'm full of defects. I really I would like to be with you, or I would like to be with my mom. And now you're repeating again, like, you're perfect. You don't need to be better. You're already better. You are the better version of yourself right now.
I love
So,
that.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Be always aware that this is an open space, and everyone, doesn't matter the question that arises, you can always welcome to put it into the chat or like talk here, like such as of today did it. And if you maybe want to join the group in Telegram, you can always join us. We have also that listed in the Elena research page, in the community study sessions, and also in like the page of Gabriel Lugo in YouTube, in Gaia Despierta. And you're always welcome in all these spaces. Don't worry, there is no judgment. It's just like literally a place we can talk and you can feel like at home. I hope so. So thank you for enjoying today's session, to join the session, to be here with us. And we will wait you next Thursday, again, same hour, 7 p.m. CAT. And Gabriel in America is what?
Eastern time, 1
Eastern time?
p.m.
1 p.m. Yeah. See you then next time.